The Medieval Archer is a title I gave to this series exploring the life of these people who have largely been ignored by history. We've looked at their equipment, how they trained, and how they fought. Now, we're going to look at what life was actually like for these men who lived and died with a bow in their hands. But before we do that, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. All of the content here is made possible by my patrons. Your support really helps keep this channel running. So, when you think of the Middle Ages, what comes to mind? For many people, it's the images of knights locked in deadly combat, of great cathedrals reaching for the heavens, or of majestic castles standing strong against the siege. But hidden behind these grand narratives are the everyday realities of life during this era, especially the life of the ordinary medieval archer. He wasn't born into privilege. He was probably the son of a poor farmer, maybe even one of a large family barely scraping by on a small farm plot. Life for him wasn't easy. His days were filled with chores on the farm. He helped plant crops, took care of livestock, and maybe even hunted small game for food. His nights were spent in a simple home, usually sharing a bed with several other people. His world was small, his horizons limited. The idea of adventure or a different life seemed like a distant fantasy. But everything changed when he picked up the bow for the first time. The bow became his passion, his way out of the monotony of daily existence. The young boy soon gained proficiency with the bow and arrow. He joined local archery contests, winning prizes that brought a little extra coin to his family's coffers. He honed his skills until he could split hairs with his arrows, becoming the talk of the region. People began to notice this kid who could shoot better than most men twice his age. His reputation grew, and so did his confidence. He started thinking bigger, dreaming of adventures beyond his village. Then one fateful day, scouts from a neighboring lord's army arrived in the village looking for potential recruits. When they heard about the young archer, they summoned him for a test. The boy stepped forward, eager to show what he could do. He met the scouts' expectations and more, impressing them with his accuracy and speed. The moment he notched an arrow and let loose, they knew they had found a gem. The scouts offered him a chance to join the army. For the young archer, it was an opportunity he couldn't pass up. He said goodbye to his family, promising to return as a hero. With a knapsack on his back and a bow in his hand, he left his village, his heart pounding with excitement. But joining the army wasn't the walk in the park he imagined. He quickly learned that being a soldier meant hard work. He drilled for hours, learning how to fight as part of a team, how to strategize, and most importantly, how to survive on the battlefield. But he excelled at archery, easily adapting to the rigors of military life. He rose through the ranks, earning respect and admiration from his fellow soldiers. Soon, he wasn't just a squire trying to make a name for himself, but a respected member of the military, ready to face any challenge. When his lord received word of an upcoming battle, the archer felt a mix of fear and excitement. This was his moment to prove himself, to see if his skills could stand up against real enemies. He prepared for battle, readying his equipment, checking his arrows, and making sure his bow was in top condition. He knew that in a few hours, he would be facing opponents who were just as skilled as he was, and he needed to be ready. As the battle commenced, the archer found himself in the thick of the action. The clash of steel on steel echoed around him, the shouts of soldiers filling the air. The sight of blood and the smell of sweat and death hung heavy in the atmosphere. But amidst the chaos, he stood firm, his bow a steady presence in his shaking hands. When the time came for him to take a shot, he did so without hesitation. His arrow found its mark, bringing down an enemy soldier. He took aim again and again, each shot precise and effective. He fought alongside his comrades, helping them when he could, healing them when necessary. He was a vital part of the team, his arrows often deciding the outcome of close fights. Throughout the battle, he remained focused, pushing through fatigue and fear to deliver accurate shot after accurate shot. When the dust settled and the cheers of victory rang out, he stood amidst the fallen, his bow still held high. He had proven himself, not just as a soldier, but as a hero. For many archers, this would be the high point of their lives. They'd go on to win many battles and become legends in their lord's eyes. For some, the stories would grow until they became half man, half myth. But for most, life as a medieval archer was not that glorious. For many, the battles kept coming, year after year. Season after season, one battle bled into the next. They traveled from town to town, pillaging whatever resources they could find, eating whatever they could get their hands on. They slept in the open, exposed to the elements, and death stalked them every step of the way. Disease was as dangerous as any sword. A bad wound could mean the difference between glory and a slow death. Starvation was a constant threat. And if you didn't die, you might come down with a fever that could ravage your body and leave you helpless. And then there was boredom. When they weren't fighting, archers had little to do. They were expected to maintain their equipment and practice their craft. But there wasn't much else to keep them busy. Days were long and lonely, and nights were filled with nothing but the crackle of a small fire and the murmur of fellow soldiers sharing stories of home or past glories. Entertainment was hard to come by, and many archers found themselves turning inward, thinking longingly of their families and the simple life they'd left behind. But they couldn't afford to dwell on their past or future. Being an archer meant living in the present moment, always ready for what might happen next. They had to remain sharp, both physically and mentally, because their lives depended on it. And while an archer's life was full of challenges, it also held certain rewards. They had the camaraderie of their fellow soldiers, the respect of their commanders, and the satisfaction of knowing that they were serving their lord and their country. They had the opportunity to travel, to see places they'd never dreamed of visiting. And they had the thrill of the hunt, the challenge of the battlefield, the feeling of an arrow perfectly aimed and perfectly released. They were free from the mundane, living on the edge, always ready for action. Their life was a tapestry woven with threads of excitement, danger, solitude, camaraderie, fear and pride. It was a life far from the cozy hearth, a life that demanded courage, resilience and skill. It was the life of a medieval archer.